minutes just to settle in with a cup of tea or whatever they've got. We've got Ben here as well. Hi, Ben.
How are you, Jane?
So we'll start in a couple of secs. Okay, so I'm going to start. Most of you, I think, are on no video, so all I see is me, which is a bit awkward anyway. I assume you can all see me and you can all hear me. I will be looking at the chat and the Q&A boxes, so please, write in there if there's any question you've got or you've got any comments that you want to make, just so I know that there's people out there. That'd be great. So, okay, I'm going to start, and I'm going to start by acknowledging the country that I'm on today. That's the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So I am expecting a couple more, but what we're doing is we're going to take the webinar today, and then we're making that webinar available to those that wanted to join the webinar but couldn't do that. So we'll make that available to them. Okay, so I wanted to start first of all by providing a bit of context about where we are at the moment and how Healthy Australia is linking with the grant opportunity that's been provided by the Australian government. So Healthy Australia works in tandem with Hub Hello, and we are out there promoting programs for healthy eating, Feed Australia. There's a child protection program that we work on called Protect, and that's a program that helps to assess and analyse the risk of children in early learning, and Educate, which is a program to engage parents in the learning of their children. And about a year ago, we held a webinar, and Tamika was on that webinar, and we talked about the child protection issue for the sector. And the main thing that came out of that conversation was that educators were saying to us quite clearly that they're very good at identifying risk of children, and they also know what families are struggling, but they also don't have the time necessarily to provide the support that they think is needed to the child and the family, but also that they're not sure how to necessarily engage with those families without families becoming defensive. And so we were tasked to go away and look at what wraparound services we could provide to the early childhood education and care sector in order to provide them with access to supports and to manage the child protection services, child protection issues, I should say. So we went away and we talked to Waratah Education Foundation, and they provided us with the grants to go and do some work in Grafton up in the north coast of New South Wales, and to look at what services we could provide to the sector, community supports that would better support families and support the sector itself. And we did that work over about 9 months, and it's just recently been evaluated. And we've now identified the essential programs that need to be in place to support services. One of the things that we did is we brought in the research and evidence about adverse childhood experiences and the impact that has on parents and the impact that has on their children. And we also noted that we needed to bring services together in a coordinated way, that there was a lot of fragmentation between the different government services, early childhood, the neighbourhood centres, and they're not talking to each other, and there's no coordinated approach to responding to services. And that 1 in 5 children, maybe more, don't access early childhood for a whole range of reasons. Now we've been looking at what are the hurdles to accessing early childhood education. And the Australian government's grant application, which I hope I've sent around a few times, the main driver for that is to improve access to early childhood learning. And what they've asked in the grant application is, from your experience, what is getting in the way of accessing early learning? So I just wanted to see if people could either choose to write a response about their own experience of that, or even jump in and maybe communicate what they feel are the hurdles for families to access early learning. I'll just throw it out there. Don't be shy. Nothing? Oh, Tamika, you must have something. Here we go. Okay, cost, flexible hours, yeah. So what we're hearing from the work that we've been doing is that there's a whole load of reasons, and that the obvious one, of course, is it's expensive for people to access early learning, but also we're hearing, that there's insufficient allowable hours under the CCS as well. That's true. So that's a blockage. But we're also hearing that a number of families in poverty or living in vulnerable situations don't necessarily think that they should access early learning for a whole range of cultural reasons, that they say, well, why should they? They're not working, so they don't need to drop off their children into a childcare service. So they're seeing early learning as a childcare service rather than an early learning service. Not meeting the government's activity test, which results in sufficient hours. The stigma and the parent guilt. So that's what we're hearing quite a lot. And there seems to be a sense that not everybody understands the importance of accessing early learning and the impact that has as a protective factor for children and families, but also to support children to transition to primary school and to reach their educational development potential. So that's what we're hearing anyway. So while I chat, feel free to write down those hurdles, because we'll be using those as we go forward. Sorry. So what I want to talk to is a little bit about one of the programs that has emerged from the grafting work that we've done, and that's a program that's known as the Parent Cafe. And Anna, who's here with me today, Anna has brought in the model from the United States. She's not from the United States, but she's done a lot of work around trauma and adverse childhood experiences, and has got a passion for making sure that we do what we can to either prevent trauma or respond and support resilience in the face of trauma. So I'm going to ask Anna to talk a little bit about that program and your experience in running it in Grafton. And then once you've done that, we'll talk about the process for applying for the grant, if that's an opportunity people want to take. So Anna.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us here tonight. So Parent Cafe is it's a program about parents supporting parents and providing support to get through, challenges, good times and bad times of parenting. The way that it works is that we run small group conversations where parents gather together and they're asked a series of questions about some of the protective factors. And protective factors are things like communication, resilience, knowledge of child development, getting concrete support in times of times of need, and that it fosters an open and vulnerable conversation around how those protective factors are playing out in people's lives. So we ran these in early December in Grafton, in the neighbourhood centre there with their early childhood service. And we ran a couple of them, and they had quite a profound response from the parents that were involved. So they created some very open and vulnerable conversations, which enabled us to be able to assist those parents that needed help. Of the parents that attended, the majority of them want to continue on as volunteers to help host other cafes. And I think everybody who attended also wants to come back again and be a participant at these. So the big idea around it is, as well as providing parent support, it actually actively builds protective factors in communities. And these are the things that guard against adverse childhood experiences or assist around traumatic experiences. So parents, obviously, who have trauma can only pass down what they know, but there's a lot of research around that. So it's about building capacity in community, as well as providing connection and support. It's a great way to actually run a parent engagement strategy as well. It's not a parenting program. They're a lot of fun, as well as being vulnerable, and they're very high energy. So it's more like a party than a parenting program, but with some pretty serious conversations happening in a very constructive and safe way. So that's what the Parent Cafe is. We're going to be running a number of them in Grafton, and they're forming a very strong part of the program that Healthy Australia is running around reducing adverse childhood experiences.
Thank you, Anna. Now, if there are any questions for Anna, please either write in the Q&A, and if we can't answer them today, we'll make sure we get the answers to you. But we will try and answer them today if we can. So, yeah, in terms of the grant itself, we've been talking to a whole range of people about how we might work with the sector to develop a program that is unique to each individual service, because every community has its own specific needs. We know there are some communities that have a high incidence of autism, for example, or disabilities. We know that there are some communities that have a high Indigenous population. Some communities obviously have a high culturally and linguistically diverse population, and there's a whole range of issues around drug and alcohol and mental illness. And so we know that we can't develop one program that fits them all. And so the approach that we take is in a three-stage approach. And the first stage really is about engaging with the parents and engaging with the community. So what we do is that we train local people, both volunteers and staff, in running parent cafes, so they can actually understand what's going on for those parents, and working with community to understand what the hurdles are to accessing early learning, because the answer is going to be very different for every community. And we look to connect the system together so that there are supports for services to refer to child protection services or to early intervention programs, or whatever there might be, first 2,000 day programs, whatever there is in that community. And so that's stage one. And then stage two, we look at investing in trials of programs. So what we hear from the local community about what's needed, we look at designing and developing and testing programs in that community in the real world. And we test and evaluate what works and what doesn't work. And then stage three is scaling up the programs that work for that, for the sector and for the community, and closing down those programs that don't work. So they're the three stages. And at the end of those three stages, you've got a system in place that's unique to the early childhood education and care sector in that community, and to the local community and to the local kids and parents in there. Now, a lot of programs actually design what the program is going to look like before they've even connected with the community. This approach is about embedding in the community first, working with them, training up people that are currently working directly with the kids and with the families. And that's the early childhood education services, and it's the neighborhood centers, it's the community services, it's the not-for-profits, it's the whole system locally. And then designing with them what programs are appropriate for that particular community. And so we're looking for services that are interested in putting in a grant along those lines. We already have a number of services that have already said they want to do that. So we're working on that, on those grant applications with them. Those services that are interested and do want to continue, want to explore this opportunity further, we will work with you to help develop that proposal. And there'll be the approach will be very similar for every service, because it's a process rather than a defined design program. Now, the other thing to say is that some of you may already have grants. You're thinking about grants in the community support section of the CCCF grant, and if that's the case, then maybe that's what you want to do, and you might not want to put that grant application at risk because of this, and we completely understand that. But we really just want to put that out to anybody who's interested. We'll work with you guys, and we're happy to explore that opportunity further. The grant has to go in. Grant application has to go in by the 22nd of February. And so any service that is interested would have to start working with us in the next few days, because it will take at least a week to pull that together for every service that's interested. Okay, so that's really my monologue. And so I'm really interested if there's any questions people might have about anything I've just said. Put my glasses on so I can read the questions. No, I'm not getting anything. Okay. Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, I think I've made that silence as awkward as I could possibly make it. We'll do is, so the best, so from here on in, if you are interested in exploring that with us, you can send me an email to, I'll write that down on the thing so people have got that email. I think most of you have got it anyway. Oh. Sorry. Okay, there it is. So yeah, so if you do want to reach out to me at that email address. Okay, so if there's no other questions or no other comments.
Eugene, there's a question there from Alison about the time frame for the stages.
Thank you. I spotted. So stage 1, 2, and 3 each will take about a year each. So it's a 3-year process altogether. Now that might be 9 months, 18 months. It's likely to be not exactly a year, but we think that it will. If you give it a year for each stage, then you're giving it a good chance. I actually had a very tighter time frame when we worked at Grafton, and it was too fast, and it really sort of, people didn't stay on board and it was just too fast for the system. So you need to really take it at a pace where people can get on board, understand what's going on, get engaged, do the co-design and do the work and analyze the information that we're getting. So it's about a year per stage. Okay, thanks, Alison.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Yeah, I mean, I just worry sometimes when things are thrown together quite quickly that perhaps, you know, I wanted something that's actually going to take time and to develop and things like that, because otherwise it's, and I love the fact that it's actually being developed with your own community in mind rather than being a rolled out program, because you're right, everywhere has very different needs. So to me, it sounds like a really good approach.
Great, thanks, Alison. Anybody else got any final comments? Oh, no. Okay. All right, so as I say, send me an email. Thank you for joining the webinar. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. Thank you for joining the webinar. I just thought this would be easier than doing loads of telephone calls, but I am happy to take on calls as well, of course. So please don't hesitate to give me a call, and I'll just now put my telephone up there as well. And as I said, I'll make this available. So if you want to share the recording, I'll send out the link to the YouTube video tomorrow. And if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, then please don't hesitate to do so. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye now. All right, guys. Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks, guys.
Eugene.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.